Lauded be thy name, O Lord my God. I entreat thee, by thy name, thou truly art the Almighty, the most exalted, the ever forgiving, the most generous.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholas Wilding, all the way from the sunny lands of Birmingham, the UK. If you haven't been there, you can go and visit, a place I have been before. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is a great delight every single day to be presenting one of these study classes on either the Dawnbreakers or God Passers By, and we have people who are more qualified than me to speak on this, so they do chime in now and again, and you, well, may be one of those people. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to recap our previous session, just so we're all on the same plane. His Holiness the Bab was, of course, in Shiraz, had gone to Esfahan, and he's heading up to meet none other than Muhammad Shah, the king. Unfortunately, a letter is sent by Muhammad Shah, sending him to Markul, which is right up here in the northwestern corner of Iran. The person that's behind this, we come to realize, is Haji Mirza Agassi, who's the prime minister at the time. He's the one behind it. Now, the Bab, we realize, could have helped Iran. He could have done so much for Iran and raised the station of Iran, which is what he wanted to do, amongst many other things, but he was quashed, he was pushed down. The Guardian then goes on to say, and he brings in these two characters, one of them known as Sa'd Mash, the son of Mash, this phenomenal guy from Medina, I believe, who was a regular Joe, if you like. He wasn't anyone special as such, who ended up embracing Islam and to this very day is praised by the Islamic community, became this incredible guy. The other person was someone known by Buzurg Mir. Now, Buzurg Mir was a minister of the king Nushirvan Adel, meaning this just king that existed. An amazing king, and he was known for being very just, so much so that he'd have this big castle that he'd lived in, and there was a rope that was outside. And anyone who felt they were being treated unjustly could go along and pull the rope. This is a bit of backstory for you, not in the Dawnbreakers. And it's rumoured that even a donkey who felt that he was being mistreated by his rider went along with his teeth, grabbed the rope, rang the bell, and the king came and dealt justly with him. So you have this minister of this king, this very fair king, and his name is Buzurg Mir. Now, he was a physician, an incredibly intelligent guy who everyone looked up to. He had also interpreted dreams and he'd risen up the ranks. However, he ended up going down the wrong road. He didn't embrace Islam. He ended up actually being a bit of a terror. He was thrown into a pit and then lost his eye. Now, the Guardian brings this story in to say that even though Haji Mirza Agassi, the prime minister, knew of this story, he didn't realize that he's going down exactly the same route, not paying any attention to what's happened in the past, and it's going to go down the same route. We know that the Bab was going from...
Mom, where's your charger?
Say again? Yvette? Oh. I don't think Yvette Hecking meant to ask about the charger at that point. I thought she meant the horse. Where's your horse, Dave? There is indeed a horse at the ready over here. Here is my charger. Sorry, carrying on.
Sorry, Dave, I thought I was muted.
Okay, no problem. Sorry, to get back on the flow. So the Bab was then traveling to Markul, as we've said. However, the first place he's going to stop is going to be in Tabriz. Now, going to Tabriz, he was allowed to take one companion and one attendant. So he takes these two brothers, Sayyid Hussein Yazdi and also Sayyid Hassan Yazdi. Hussein and Hassan, these two brothers, who were also named after second and third Imams of Shia Islam, who were the sons of Ali. Anyway, so he's allowed to take these two people. We know that the Bab paid for his own trip, his own expenses he covered. Even though the government were going to pay, he says, no, I will pay for this myself. There are a bunch of Bábís in Qazvin who very much wanted to see the Bab. However, they weren't allowed to. But they ended up going to a village called Siyai Dihan. Whilst there, this is when someone by the name of Mullah Iskandar meets the Bab. And the Bab tells Mullah Iskandar, please tell Suleiman Khan Afshar, not to be confused with the other Suleiman Khan who danced to his death and put holes in him with candles. This is a different guy, somebody who was in love with the Shaykhi philosophies. He was a follower of Sayyid Kazim. He ended up marrying the daughter of Sayyid Kazim or something like that. There's some relation. He was very close to them. But the Bab asks him, will you come and free me from captivity? Now, maybe this was done actually as a test, some may say. Some people say maybe it was done to try and bring this guy into the fold and saying, look, I am the promised one. Here I am. We're not entirely sure what the purpose was. Mullah Iskandar has translated this message across to him. He, however, doesn't respond. He doesn't want to get involved. A friend of Mullah Iskandar ends up telling Hojat. Now, Hojat was in Tehran. He was in prison. He was put in prison in Tehran. And while he was there, he speaks to his people in Zanjan. from Zanjan, go and free the Bab. So a bunch of Bábís from Zanjan and from Qazvin and from Tehran go to free the Bab. The Bab turns around and says to them, thank you so much. I don't need to be freed. The mountains of Azerbaijan also have their claim. There's a tradition from the Baha'u'llah which talks about actually this prophet going to Azerbaijan. So I don't know if there's a reference to that or if it's literally that the people in Azerbaijan get to see the beauty. They get to host the Bab. After this, we know as they're approaching the gate of Tabriz, they are going to say goodbye to Muhammad Beg Chaparchi. Muhammad Beg Chaparchi is the person who's in charge of the military, leading them, and he turns around and he, by this point, is in love with the Bab, and he cries and he says, I'm so sorry for anything I may have done that wasn't good. I pretty much adore you and I'd do anything for you. The Bab says, I count you as one of my fold. And Muhammad Beg Chaparchi is very much on board with the cause of the Bab. After this, they go into Tabriz and they're going to be delivered into the hands of Nasruddin Shah, who wasn't the king at the time. He was a prince. And we know that this prince, from the moment when he sees His Holiness the Bab until the point he becomes king, things starts getting worse and worse and worse. People, however, wanted to see the Bab. He was like a celebrity. They wanted to know about his magnetic utterances, the way he was, his charm, as his personality is described. And they would throng towards him and they would try and scream out his name and they would invoke him and they would sing, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. And some of them would even kiss the dust that he would walk past, that he would walk on. So much was the love that people had around. However, the Bab, as he's put into one of the chief houses with only Sayyid Hussein and Sayyid Hassan, the two people that he was with, the companion and the attendant, this is when the town crier comes out ringing his bell saying anybody who tries to see the Bab will have all their possessions taken and they will be put in prison. So strenuously they were trying to keep people away from His Holiness the Bab. The next day, of course, these two Bábís, and Bábís, they're out to do stuff. Haji Muhammad Taghi Milani and Haji Ali Askar. These two decide they're going to go and see the Bab, despite being told that they're going to have all their stuff taken and put in prison. As they do that, one of the guards is there, and now the guards, incidentally, was from the Nasiri regiment, who were the people who ended up killing the Bab the second time round. And he says, no, that's it, I'm going to arrest you, I'm going to take you. Sayyid Hassan comes out, the attendant comes out, and says, the Bab has told me that he has summoned these two people to him. For some reason, the guard just completely drops and says, okay, go in. Such is the power that the Bab commands him. The Bab then comments later on to these while they're inside, saying, look, the guard doesn't realize this, but he's only there to keep people out that I don't want to see. So the Bab saying this guy is, unbeknown to him, is essentially working for him. So these two come in, and this is when the Bab has a conversation with them and says to them, look, I want these two cornelian rings to have two verses put on them. They go and come as they please. They're able to visit without any problems. Haji Ali Askar ends up telling a story to Nabíl. And he says that when he was traveling with Mullah Hussein previously, had found out that Mullah Hussein was in Shiraz with the Bab, and he ended up not meeting the Bab. So Haji Ali Askar wasn't able to meet the Bab. He was very sad. All the way he's traveling, he says, I wish I met the Bab, I wish I met the Bab. Mullah Hussein says to him, don't worry, you will attain his presence 7 times. Lo and behold, whilst trying to ascertain the exact details of this ring up in Markul, they ended up meeting 7 times. And on the last meeting, His Holiness the Bab said, now the number is complete. Haji Ali Askar remembers this and is just blown away. We then go on to chapter 13, which is about the incarceration of the Bab in Markul. The Bab up in Markul is going to be taken there, but while they're in Tabriz beforehand, Sayyid Hussein asks him, he says, what's the plan? What's going to happen? And the Bab says, do you not remember? In Isfahan, I told you that we will spend 9 months in the Jabal Basit, the open mountain, and also the grievous mountain, the Jabal Shadid. Now, interestingly enough, this open mountain, grievous mountain, Jabal Basit, has the same exact abjad value as Markul. Jabal Shadid, same abjad value as Chehret. So this is how we knew what he was talking about just there. Now, why was the Bab put in Markul? There's a couple of reasons. One, because it was in the northwesternmost corner, but a lot of the people in that area, they were Kurds, they were Sunnis, so they were quite against the Shi'is, and especially Sayyids. They didn't like the Bab. His Holiness was a Sayyid. Ali Khan's mother was also a Kurd. Ali Khan was also the brother-in-law of Haji Mirza Agassi, the Prime Minister, who was the one behind this whole moving. So he would definitely keep close tabs on it. There'd be no doubt about that. 5 days after this conversation in Tabriz about where are we going, and the Bab says, well, I told you in Isfahan, that's when they're moved and they go to Markul. The idea is to try and choke the Bab out. Of course, when he gets to Markul, what happens? People absolutely love the Bab. They start trying to catch a glimpse of his face. Every time they'd have a dispute, they'd sort of look and try and invoke the name of the Bab. Ali Khan, the governor, says, stop, no more. This is it. This is not going to happen. And also bans any Bábís staying in Markul. Says no one's allowed to stay in the city of Markul. Not at all. It's completely and utterly banned. Sayyid Hussein says that for the first 2 weeks, nobody was allowed to come. Now, Sayyid Hussein would stay very close to the Bab. His brother Sayyid Hassan is the one who would go down into the town to buy things. Sayyid Hassan would meet a guy named Sheikh Hassan al-Zunusi. And Sheikh Hassan al-Zunusi would stay in a mosque outside of Markul at night because he wasn't allowed to stay in Markul. Remember, Ali Khan had banned this. What ends up happening is Sheikh Hassan al-Zunusi would see some other Bábís who were coming outside Markul, would translate what they're trying to say, tell them, and then Sayyid Hassan would then go and tell the Bab. Eventually, the Bab says to Sayyid Hassan, go and tell Sheikh Hassan al-Zunusi that I'm going to summon Ali Khan to me tomorrow. Now, this, bear in mind, is a prisoner who's talking about summoning the governor, the most powerful man in the land. Of course, we know that this happens. The next day, we have this beautiful thing that plays out. Ali Khan comes to the prison and he's with the Bab and he's looking absolutely stunned. What's the reason for this? Well, he explains. He says, as I was out on my ride earlier on, I heard a noise coming from a river. I saw it was you, the Bab, praying. I was blown away. He then goes up into the prison, starts shouting at everyone, why did you let the Bab out? When he gets to the top, he realizes that His Holiness the Bab is in his cell. He then looks at the Bab and he's very confused. And the Bab says to him, of course, I can be in 2 places at once. That was me you saw. Ali Khan at this point is transformed. He says, forgive me for what I have done. He now realizes the magic. The Bab says, you're lucky because God has unveiled to your eye what the truth is. You're very lucky that he's allowed you to see this. Ali Khan from this point becomes a devout follower. He starts giving the Bab the best fruits he can, anything, baklava, tea, it was all coming to the Bab. The Bab, remember, who was in this prison cell, who for 9 months didn't have a light at night. There was no door to his cell, but there were 2 guards and 4 dogs that would keep guard outside. Ali Khan then goes and says to the Bab, I want to bring someone to you. And he goes and gets Sheikh Hassan al-Zunusi and he brings him to the Bab. From this point on, Bábís are allowed to visit. They would come and stay in Markul. They would actually have the first ever 3-day visits that would take place. They would come and stay for 3 days. The Bab asked Sayyid Hussein to read something called the Mahragal Gulub. Now, this Mahragal Gulub is something that Haji Mullah Mehdi, who in the time of Sheikh Ahmad, around that sort of time, had written this book. And this book was all about the sufferings of the Imam Hussein, all the sufferings that he went through, his life, and the terrible story. His great-grandson, Haji Mullah Kamaluddin Naraghi, this is someone that we know that this book, basically, about all the sufferings of the Imam Hussein, was read. And the Bab would cry and weep constantly about this, because the Bab obviously is upset about what's happened to Imam Hussein, but he knows that this is actually going to happen to the next Hussein, being Mirza Hussein Ali, referring to Baha'u'llah. And this is why he's so upset. Haji Mirza Kamaluddin Naraghi is a guy who we met earlier on in our chapters. And I don't want to confuse you, but if you remember, there was someone called Gamsari. And Gamsari heard from a guy called Nayani, who heard from Abdul Wahab, that someone special was born in the year 1817. He was very confused because he discovers the Bab and he realizes the Bab was born in 1819 and he doesn't understand what it is. Only when he meets Kamaluddin Naraghi, does Kamaluddin Naraghi tell him about Baha'u'llah and reveal to him that Baha'u'llah was born in 1817. So this is who Kamaluddin Naraghi is. Anyway, it's not so important. The Bab then describes a little bit about his revelation, how he received it, how he had drunk the blood of the severed head of Imam Hussein. And that's how he gets his revelation. From the moment that the Bab is sent to Azerbaijan, the mountains of Azerbaijan, Iran starts a rapid descent. Muhammad Shah and Aghasi have many problems. People such as Jafar Guli Khan in Namdar, who's leading this revolt in Khorasan, this province over here. People are now rebelling against the government. Things are taking a downturn. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes what happened in our previous session. Hopefully there's some clarity there as to what's happened. We are going to go on and read. I wanted to explain a little bit about the Kitab al-Bayan, with your permission. What we'll do, maybe we'll carry on reading, then maybe nearer the end I'll go into the Bayan, and those people who don't wish to hear it or who have perhaps heard it and gone past us by can check out. Let's see how we go.
At the arrival of the Bab in Tabriz, when he was going towards Maku, is a very significant scene we could focus on, because as he arrived, the crowds gathered calling on Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. It's reminiscent of the arrival of Jesus in Jerusalem when people said Hosanna. They greeted him in that fashion. So I thought this should be noted.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And as we know, when God passes by, the Guardian draws so many parallels with His Holiness Christ. There are so many parallels with the ministry of the Bab and the Bab and His Holiness Christ. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for that comment.
Mullah Hussein was at that time residing in Mashhad and was endeavouring, despite the tumult which that revolt had occasioned, to spread the knowledge of the new revelation. No sooner had he discovered that the Salar, in his desire to extend the scope of the rebellion, had determined to approach him and obtain his support, than he promptly decided to leave the city in order to avoid implicating himself in the plots of that proud and rebellious chief. In the dead of night, with only Gambar Ali as his attendant, he proceeded on foot in the direction of Tehran, from which place he was determined to visit Azerbaijan, where he hoped to meet the Bab. His friends, when they learned of the manner of his departure, immediately provided whatever would be conducive to the comforts of his long and arduous journey, and hastened to overtake him. Mullah Hussein declined their help. "I have vowed," he said, "to walk the whole distance that separates me from my beloved. I shall not relax in my resolve until I have reached my destination." He even tried to induce Gambar Ali to return to Mashhad, but was finally obliged to yield to his entreaty to allow him to act as his servant throughout his pilgrimage to Azerbaijan. On his way to Tehran, Mullah Hussein was enthusiastically greeted by the believers in the different towns through which he passed. They addressed to him the same request and received from him the same reply. I have heard the following testimony from the lips of Aghay Kalim. When Mullah Hussein arrived at Tehran, I, together with a large number of believers, went to visit him. He seemed to us the very embodiment of constancy, of piety and virtue. He inspired us with his rectitude of conduct and passionate loyalty. Such were the force of his character and the ardour of his faith that we felt convinced that he, unaided and alone, would be capable of achieving the triumph of the faith of God. He was, with secrecy, ushered into the presence of Baha'u'llah, and soon after his interview proceeded to Azerbaijan. The night before his arrival at Maku, which was the eve of the 4th Nowruz after the declaration of the mission of the Bab, which fell in that year, the year 1264 AH, on the 13th of the month of Rabi'u Thani, Ali Khan dreamed a dream. In my sleep, he thus relates his story. I was startled by the sudden intelligence that Muhammad, the Prophet of God, was soon to arrive at Maku, that he was to proceed directly to the castle in order to visit the Bab, and to offer him his congratulations on the advent of the Nowruz festival. In my dream, I ran out to meet him, eager to extend to so holy a visitor the expression of my humble welcome. In a state of indescribable gladness, I hastened on foot in the direction of the river, and as I reached the bridge, which lay at a distance of a maidan from the town of Maku, I saw 2 men advancing towards me. I thought one of them to be the Prophet himself, while the other, who walked behind him, I supposed to be one of his distinguished companions. I hastened to throw myself at his feet, and was bending to kiss the hem of his robe, when I suddenly awoke. A great joy had flooded my soul. I felt as if paradise itself, with all its delights, had been crowded into my heart. Convinced of the reality of my vision, I performed my ablutions, offered my prayer, arrayed myself in my richest attire, anointed myself with perfume, and proceeded to the spot where, the night before in my dream, I had gazed upon the countenance of the Prophet. I had instructed my attendants to saddle 3 of my best and swiftest steeds, and to conduct them immediately to the bridge. The sun had just risen when, alone and unescorted, I walked out of the town of Marku in the direction of the river. As I approached the bridge, I discovered, with a throb of wonder, the two men whom I had seen in my dream walking one behind the other and advancing towards me. Instinctively, I fell at the feet of the one whom I believed to be the prophet and devoutly kissed them. I begged him and his companion to mount the horses which I had prepared for their entry into Marku. Nay, was his reply. I have vowed to accomplish the whole of my journey on foot. I will walk to the summit of this mountain and will there visit your prisoner. This strange experience of Ali Khan brought a deepening of reverence in his attitude towards the Bab. His faith in the potency of his revelation became even greater, and his devotion to him was vastly increased. In an attitude of humble surrender, he followed Mullah Hussein until they reached the gate of the castle. As soon as the eyes of Mullah Hussein fell upon the countenance of his master, who was seen standing at the threshold of his gate, he halted instantly and, bowing low before him, stood motionless by his side. The Bab stretched forth his arms and affectionately embraced him. Taking him by the hand, he conducted him to his chamber. He then summoned his friends into his presence and celebrated in their company the feast of Nowruz. Dishes of sweet meats and of the choicest fruits had been spread before him. He distributed them among his assembled friends, and as he offered some of the quinces and apples to Mullah Hussein, he said, "These luscious fruits have come to us from Milan, the Ardijanat, and have been specially plucked and consecrated to this feast by the Ismullahul Fatiq Muhammad Taqi." Until that time, no one of the disciples of the Bab but Sayyid Hussein Yazdi and his brother had been allowed to spend the night within the castle. That day, Ali Khan went to the Bab and said, "If it be your desire to retain Mullah Hussein with you this night, I am ready to abide by your wish, for I have no will of my own. However long you desire him to stay with you, I pledge myself to carry out your command." The disciples of the Bab continued to arrive in increasing numbers at Marku, and were immediately and without the least restriction admitted to his presence.
What a beautiful, beautiful story, if we can imagine how rich this is. Mullah Hussein, this young guy, remember, he had no shoes. It said that he had no shoes. He had a shirt which didn't have buttons as well. This man absolutely in love with His Holiness the Bab. He's in Khorasan, and the Salar and Mashhad, one of the two people, remember I said there was Jafar Guli Khan and Namdar, and the Salar, that they were trying to create this revolt in Khorasan, and Mullah Hussein says, "I want no part of this. I'm not getting involved in politics at all." He decides that he's going to go and visit His Holiness the Bab in Marku. Now see where Mashhad is and see where Marku is. He decides to go and visit. Now, is he going to go by horse? Is he going to by donkey? How's he going to go? He's going to walk. Such is his love. He's going to walk, and quite possibly barefoot. We hear that he doesn't have shoes quite all. He's going to Parbarande. He's going to walk all the way to go and see His Holiness the Bab. His attendant, Gambar Ali, decides that he wants to come with him. And he says to him, "No, you're not coming." And Gambar Ali says, "Please, please." And he begs for them. Eventually, Gambar Ali is allowed to go with Mullah Hussein to go and see the Bab. As they're going along the way, many people greet Mullah Hussein, and they're in love with Mullah Hussein. The power of his erudition, he was phenomenal at debating. His knowledge was incredible. His humility, all these qualities, people greet him and they're so excited to see him. Agha Khalid Mirza Musa, Baha'u'llah's brother, gives this account. And he says, when we went to visit him in Tehran, you can look at the piety and his virtue. Such was this guy. He could achieve the triumph of the faith of God alone. This is how much he was revered, Mullah Hussein. Now, we're not even talking about Quddus, we're talking about Mullah Hussein. It's just mind-blowing. He then met Baha'u'llah. He goes and has an audience with Baha'u'llah. From here, He then goes on and starts walking his way up. And bear in mind, there'd be people along the way that would be against Mullah Hussein as well. It's not that everyone loved him. There were people who were against the Bábí movement, who would have been against him, who would have tried to cause problems. As he's making his way up, we know that here in Marku, Ali Khan has a dream. In his dream, he sees the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has come to visit the Bab. And he says in his dream, he goes down by this river, by this bridge, and he sees there are two people. One of them is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The other one is an intimate disciple of his. He goes to bend down and to kiss the feet. All of a sudden, he wakes up. He's disappeared. Ali Khan is so convinced that this is real. He gets up, he puts his best clothes on, his best perfume. He summons 3 of his best horses, being well dressed, to go down and meet this visitor that he's convinced is coming. He goes with these horses and he's at the river, by the bridge, only to see Mullah Hussein and Gambar Ali. He goes and drops to the feet of Mullah Hussein. He embraces him so much. Also Gambar Ali, and he says, look, I've got these horses. Please, Beffarmor, please jump on these horses, these immaculate horses. Mullah Hussein refuses. He says, no, I'll be going up by foot. And then you have this beautiful scene, where Mullah Hussein goes to the gate of the prison. And at the gate, he sees his beloved. He sees the Bab standing there. He bows down and the Bab just comes motionlessly beside him and then outstretches his arm and gives him this beautiful warm hug. Imagine after walking all that distance, now he's united with His Holiness the Bab. Previously, Ali Khan would not let anybody stay in the castle. This was an absolute no-no. But Ali Khan now turns around and says to the Bab, whatever you want, I will allow to happen. If you want him to stay in the castle, he's staying in the castle. Such beautiful imagery, beautiful. Sorry, I got emotional during that. I just find this so touching. Are there any comments or questions, ladies and gentlemen, before carrying on?
Just a comment, really. It's an absolutely incredible part of the Dawnbreakers, and I'm convinced that God loved this Ali Khan very much, because not only did he have that vision of the Bab praying when he went outside into the countryside, but then after that he had this dream when it turned out to be what he thought was the Prophet Muhammad, but it turned out to be Mullah Hussein. It's just incredible, really. That God really enabled this man to and helped him and guided him really to see the truth. It's just an incredible story, really. It's mind blowing.
Absolutely.
Dave?
What about it? Yes.
Wasn't Ali Khan related to Haji Mirza Khalsi?
He was the brother-in-law. Correct.
It's quite incredible, the contrast between the two, huh? How one was available, was opened his eyes, and the other one closed his eyes.
Absolutely.
There's reference to these fruits and so forth that came from Milan. Can you tell us anything more about that for the Nowruz feast?
Yeah, I think they're the finest fruits, and it talks about it being Jannat, I think, which means paradise, if I'm not mistaken. That it goes down the Arda Jannat that had come from Milan. So the Arda Jannat is the land of paradise, is where it comes. So they're basically, these finest fruits are basically brought, I think, to celebrate. As far as I understand, I don't know if there's any deeper significance to that, Rick. On your point, though, of the sibling, that they're related and they're very different. So if you look at me and my brother's a neuroscientist who's graduated from Oxford, who's incredibly smart. I'm a DJ from Reading. Siblings and relatives can be different.
One day, as the Bab, in the company of Mullah Hussein, was looking out over the landscape of the surrounding country from the roof of the castle, he gazed towards the west, and as he saw the Araxes winding its course far away below him, turned to Mullah Hussein and said, "That is the river, and this is the bank thereof, of which the poet Hafez has thus written, O Zephyr, shouldest thou pass by the banks of the Araxes, implant a kiss on the earth of that valley, and make fragrant thy breath. Hail 1,000 times hail to thee, O abode of Salma. How dear is the voice of thy camel drivers, how sweet the jingling of thy bells. The days of your stay in this country are approaching their end. but for the shortness of your stay, we would have shown you the abode of Salma, even as we have revealed to your eyes the banks of the Araxes. By the abode of Salma, the Bab meant the town of Salmas, which is situated in the neighborhood of Shirik and which the Turks designate as Salmas. Continuing his remarks, the Bab said, "It is the immediate influence of the Holy Spirit that causes words such as these to stream from the tongue of poets, the significance of which they themselves are oftentimes unable to apprehend." The following verse is also divinely inspired. Shiraz will be thrown into a tumult. A youth of sugar tongue will appear. A fear lest the breath of his mouth should agitate and upset Baghdad. The mystery enshrined within the verse is now concealed. It will be revealed in the year after him. The Bab subsequently quoted this well-known tradition. Treasures lie hidden beneath the throne of God. The key to those treasures is the tongue of poets. He then, one after the other, related to Mullah Hussein those events which must needs transpire in the future, and bade him not to mention them to anyone. "A few days after your departure from this place," the Bab informed him, "they will transfer us to another mountain. Ere you arrive at your destination, the news of our departure from Maku will have reached you." The prediction which the Bab had uttered was promptly fulfilled. Those who had been charged to watch secretly the movements and conduct of Ali Khan submitted to Haji Mirza Aghasi a detailed report in which they expatiated upon his extreme devotion to his prisoner and described such incidents as tended to confirm their statements. Day and night, they wrote him, the warden of the castle of Maku is to be seen associating with his captive in conditions of unrestrained freedom and friendliness. Ali Khan, who has obstinately refused to wed his daughter with the heir to the throne of Persia, pleading that such an act would so infuriate the Sunni relatives of his mother that they would unhesitatingly put him and his daughter to death, now with the keenest eagerness desires that same daughter to be espoused to the Bab. The latter had refused, but Ali Khan still persists in his entreaty. But for the prisoner's refusal, the nuptials of the maiden would have been already celebrated. Ali Khan had actually made such a request and had even begged Mullah Hussein to intercede in his behalf with the Bab, but had failed to obtain his consent. These malevolent reports had an immediate influence upon Haji Mirza Aghasi. Fear and resentment again impelled that capricious minister to issue a peremptory order for the transference of the Bab to the castle of Shirik. 20 days after Nowruz, the Bab bade farewell to the people of Maku, who in the course of his 9 months' captivity had recognized to a remarkable degree the power of his personality and the greatness of his character. Mullah Hussein, who had already, at the bidding of the Bab, departed from Maku, was still in Tabriz when the news of his master's predicted transference to Shirik reached him. As the Bab bade his last farewell to Mullah Hussein, he addressed him in these words: "You have walked on foot all the way from your native province to this place. On foot you will likewise must return until you reach your destination, for your days of horsemanship are yet to come. You are destined to exhibit such courage, such skill, and heroism as shall eclipse the mightiest deeds of the heroes of old. Your daring exploits will win the praise and admiration of the dwellers in the eternal kingdom. You should visit on your way the believers of Khoi, of Urumiyeh, of Maraghi, of Milan, of Tabriz, of Zanjan, of Ghazvin, and of Tehran. To each you will convey the expression of my love and tender affection. You will strive to inflame their hearts anew with the fire of the love of the beauty of God, and will endeavor to fortify their faith in his revelation. From Tehran, you should proceed to Mazindaran, where God's hidden treasure will be made manifest to you. You will be called upon to perform deeds so great as will dwarf the mightiest achievements of the past. The nature of your task will, in that place, be revealed to you, and strength and guidance will be bestowed upon you that you may be fitted to render your service to his cause." On the morning of the 9th day after Nowruz, Mullah Hussein set forth as bidden by his master on his journey to Mazindaran. To Ghamr Ali, the Bab addressed these parting words: "The Ghambar Ali of a bygone age would glory in that his namesake has lived to witness a day for which even he, who was the Lord of his Lord, sighed in vain, of which he, with keen longing, has spoken. Would that my eyes could behold the faces of my brethren, who have been privileged to attain unto his day.
One day as the Báb is with Mullah Hussein, he looks around from the roof of the castle and looks to the west and he sees the Erexes. And there's this poem from Hafez, this incredible poet, who says, "This is the river and this is the bank thereof, of which the poet Hafez has thus written. O Zephyr, should thou pass the banks of the Erexes and plant a kiss on the earth of that valley and make fragrant thy breath, hail 1,000 times, hail to thee, O abode of Salma. How dear is the voice of the camel drivers, how sweet the jinglings of thy bells." Now this, on the face of it, seems like a slightly bizarre poem if you don't know what it's about, but according to the Báb, it's making reference to this river of Erexes, which divides where Marku is, and then when it talks about Salmaz, the town of Salmaz here, this is where Chehreg is, the town of Chehreg. So he's saying that this poem was to do with this time. He then goes on to another poem. He tells Mullah Hussein that he's not going to be staying there that long, by the abode of Salma, the Báb meant the town of Salmaz, which is talking about Chehreg. The immediate influence of the Holy Spirit causes certain words, so poems will write things, even when they don't understand what it is they're writing. One example of this actually is in the mansion of Bahji. If you go to the mansion of Bahji, you'll see this incredible piece of poetry above the door, which the owner of the house, before Baha'u'llah had it, Udi Kamar, took the house and made it double-story. He puts this poem saying, "Greetings and salutations rest upon this mansion, which increaseth in splendour through the passage of time. Manifold wonders and marvels are found therein, and pens are baffled in attempting to describe them." Lo and behold, Baha'u'llah then later comes and stays in it. So there's something about these things that are unveiled. It talks here about the year of Hin. The mystery and shine within this verse is now concealed. It will be revealed in the year Hin. What is the year Hin? We know that Hin literally means after a while. That's what Hin means. But we also know the abjad value of Hin is 68. And this is a reference to Baha'u'llah's coming. 68 translates to 1853 when Baha'u'llah had his revelation. So it's quite beautiful, some of these things that are hidden there, or treasure lies hidden beneath the throne of God. So there's these various poems the Báb goes into. Haji Mirza Agassi, the Prime Minister, is informed that Ali Khan is now being nice to the Báb. He's meant to be doing everything to shut him down, but he's now been told that they're not doing this. As a result, a decision is made to move His Holiness the Báb from Marku to Chehreg. 9 months later, we know that he leaves. So he goes all the way from Marku, this prison city here, down to Chehreg, which is in the vicinity of Salmaz. Mullah Hussein is told by the Báb, "Your days of horsemanship are yet to be seen." What does this mean? Very interesting. Your days of horsemanship are yet to be seen. He then tells him to head back towards Tehran. So you'll see there we've got Khoy, we've got Urumiyeh, we've got Marageh, the Milans over here to go to Tabriz, to Zanjan, to Gazvin, and then eventually to go to Tehran. And then when he goes to Tehran, he's going to head into Mazandaran, this province up here. And in Mazandaran, he will meet who? The hidden treasure of God. God's hidden treasure will be made manifest to you. Now, who is God's hidden treasure? Baha'u'llah. Or is it? Let's read on and see. Any comments or questions on this bit?
Sorry, Dave. Yeah, can you go to the end of the previous page and the top of this page, the cities he's asked to go to? Do we know anything about whether or not Mullah Hussein galvanized those populations in those different places in anticipation of the battles that they would see?
There's no reference in particular in the Dawnbreakers to what happened there, but I'm sure he did. I know that the Báb also ends up visiting a few of these places, and some of them react incredibly, some of them not so much, but there's no doubt he would have done.
I think you could explain the last paragraph, really. I did not understand what the Báb was saying to Khambar Ali.
Khambar Ali was a person who came under the umbrella of the Imam Ali. He was essentially an Iranian from Khorasan. So that's really a very beautiful thing. So Khambar Ali comes under the auspices, they call it, the Imam Ali then becomes his Mawla. So Khambar Ali of before, i.e. the disciple or the friend of the Imam Ali, would have longed to have been here. So Khambar Ali has a lord, okay? That is the Imam Ali. Now the Imam Ali has a lord. Who is he? The Prophet of God, Muhammad, peace be upon him. So the lord of his sighed for something. What did he sigh for? He sighed that I want to see my brethren, my brothers. Now, all the disciples said, are we not your brothers? He said, no, no, no. You are not my ikhwan. You are not my brothers. You are my disciples. My brothers are coming with the promised one. And this is a passage that is quoted in another part of God Passes By, as you know. We read that before. So Qambar Ali, in essence, under the auspices of the Imam Ali, the Imam Ali's master and teacher and Lord, the Prophet of God, but the Prophet, towards the end of his life, said, you know, I want to see my brothers. And this is a long hadith. It's in all the books. They ask him, what about, who are your brothers? We are here with you. He said, no, no, you are my true brothers, coming with Hazrat Bāb, Hazrat Baha'u'llah. They are the ones. And then the Prophet goes on to say, these people, when they laugh, it's like prayer. When they sleep, it's like they're going on a pilgrimage. And he starts in this language of, you said it the other night, dearest Dave, of tremendous hyperbole, of, you know, basically to recognize the stationary and the uniqueness of this day. Sorry for this interruption. Khuda bebakhshid, Dave. You're extreme. I think you're going higher and higher in the realm of God because you're forgiving such a sinner as me. I think every time I say something, you go higher and higher in the sight of Baha'u'llah.
Dr. Fanan Abbasir, thank you so much for your input. And of course, Sandra, for the great question. So thank you. We're going to pause here now. We're going to talk a little bit about the Persian Bayan because we're talking about Ma'qul and we're moving on from Ma'qul. This is really where the entire thing comes together. So taken from God Passes By, this particular thing, it says that within the walls of the same fortress, Ma'qul, the Bayan exposition, that monumental repository of the laws and precepts of the new dispensation, and the treasury enshrining most of the Bāb's references and attributes to, as well as his warning regarding him whom God will make manifest, was revealed. This work was peerless among the doctrinal works of the founder of the Bābī dispensation. It consists of 9 Vāheds of 19 chapters each, except the last Vāhed, which comprises of only 10 chapters. It's approximately 8,000 verses long, so that's quite big. Bigger than the Quran. The Quran is roughly 6,500. It's not to be confused with the smaller and less weighty Arabic Bayan, which was revealed in the same time period, that only has 420 verses. It's fulfilling the Muhammadan prophecy that a youth from Bani Hasham will reveal a new book and promulgate a new law, wholly safeguarded from the interpolation and corruption which has been the fate of so many of the Bāb's lesser works. The book occupies a pivotal position in the Bābī literature, and a lot of this, by the way, is taken from God Passes By, should be regarded primarily as a eulogy of the Promised One rather than a code of laws and ordinances designed to be a permanent guide to future generations. This book at once abrogated the laws and ceremonials enjoined by the Quran regarding prayer, fasting, marriage, divorce, and inheritance. So it doesn't get rid of those things, it just changes the actual laws and the ceremonies involved with regards to these. It's moreover interpreted in a masterly fashion the meaning of certain terms frequently occurring in the sacred books of the previous dispensations, such as paradise, as hell, death, the resurrection, the return, the balance, the hour, the last judgment, and the like. So it looks at these various different themes. It's designedly severe in the rules and regulations it imposed, revolutionizing its principles it instills, calculated to awaken from their age-long torpor the clergy and the people, and to administer a sudden and fatal blow to the obsolete and corrupt institutions it proclaimed, through its drastic provisions, the advent of an anticipated day, when the summoner shall summon to a stern business, when he will demolish whatever hath been before him, even as the apostle of God demolished the ways of that preceded him. So just like the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, how his laws came and did this, the Bible is going to do the same. And then we've touched upon this before, it's the third Vāhed, I think, chapter 16, wherein it talks about, well is it with him in his prophetic announcement, who fixeth his gaze upon the order of Baha'u'llah, and rendereth thanks unto his Lord, for he will assuredly be made manifest. God indeed irrevocably ordained it in the Bayan. So here the Bāb mentions Baha'u'llah in the third Vāhed, chapter 16. He mentions it. Each Vāhed begins with an Arabic summary of its contents, which makes it easier to read. Extracts of the works are published in some selections of the writings of the Bāb. A.L.M. Nicolas translated the entire work, as we know. Apparently, E.G. Browne also tried to translate some of it. Now, E.G. Browne, the Orientalist of Cambridge, who was an absolute mastermind of Arabic and Persian, from what I understand, he tried to translate it. However, from what I'm told, his knowledge on Islam and the Quran wasn't deep enough to be able to do this. So there's some very core themes that he completely misunderstands. And the scholar Nader Saidi describes it as an absolutely beautiful example of how not to translate something. So for those who read French, you're very lucky. We're going to look at some of the examples of the harsh laws that are in the Kitab al-Bayan. And this might come as quite a shock to some of you, some of these laws. The Bab says that all lands must be conquered by the Bayan. He says that the property of unbelievers must be seized. The spoils of conquests are to be distributed. That no marriage with non-believers can take place. Unbelievers will be banned from 5 provinces in Iran, which I believe will be actuated by Bábí kings in the future. Bábís cannot allow unbelievers in their homes. And then finally, all books written by non-Bábís should be destroyed. Now, if you're like me the first time when I saw this, you'd think this isn't with the spirit of the Baha'i faith, the Bábí faith. Are these really serious things? You see, when the Bab writes this, he does a few things. He says that all of these are dependent on Baha'u'llah accepting them. He also, in my opinion, in the manner in which Baha'u'llah says you can marry 2 wives, and then Abdul Baha says if you can treat them equally, and actually you can't treat them equally, what he's doing is he's laying down these laws, and then he goes on to say in a whole bunch of different other areas, you cannot cause offense to anybody. So immediately, pretty much all of these disappear. That this gentle spirit, this love, he mentions these things, and then he basically says, no, you can't do them, no, you can't do them, no, you can't do them. It's very interesting, the method in which he used. And again, the Bayan isn't about a book of laws, it's a eulogy to Baha'u'llah. It's this beautiful thing to Baha'u'llah, which we know the Bayan wasn't completed. As I said, there were these different Vahej of chapters of 19. The last one only has 10 chapters, and we believe that it's the Iran, which Baha'u'llah writes, to be the continuation of the Bayan. So I hope that clears up a little bit about those harsh laws. They were not standing, they were never enforced, they were never meant to be enforced either. The Bab is making a point. He gives conditions that make them impossible to do. So he's actually saying you must do the opposite, in fact, breaking it down. The gentle spirit and compassionate philosophy by the Bab, he prohibits causing grief to anything. So as I said, those other things, they go out the window on that. He says you must respond to all letters promptly. He says that all cries by babies must be answered. So if you hear a crying baby in a Baha'i conference, make sure you let them know that. The Bab has said you've got to answer them straight away. You can't restrict the movement of anyone. So you can't have slaves and people that you're controlling. There should be no warfare, slavery, cutting of hands, and stoning. Also, no overloading animals. See, even to the animals, His Holiness the Bab is being so kind and so loving. And this is all about exuding love. Doors must be tall enough for tall people. One of my favorites here. What does this mean? Doors must be tall enough for tall people. Again, not causing grief to anything. Even the door should be tall enough. And when you go to someone's house, if you have to bend down, you're making yourself humble in it. And it's no, your home should be such a warm place where you're inviting people in. You should repay all loans. There's no spanking or humiliating children. Perfect everything you do. Make all handicrafts perfectly. See, the Bab was obsessed with beauty. He absolutely loved beauty in everything that he talks about, and perfection. Refine your character and beautify all things. Change your clothes and wash often. I need to show this to someone. There's some beautiful laws that come in. You're also not allowed to read other people's mail. So if you ever see someone texting or something, don't you be looking over. Help travelers who are weak. No confessions or sins to people or seeking forgiveness from them. No wearing of frightening outfits in public. Possibly my favorite law of the Bab, that you cannot wear frightening outfits when you're out in public. So Halloween, I guess, wasn't a thing. Again, what's the message behind this? It's about causing offense, upsetting people. If you've got any scary outfits, throw them away. We're not going to wear them. Rage and wrath prohibited. That's a good one, yeah. Special prayers for moments of birth and death. And then this Bábí calendar that we have with these 19 days and these 19 months and so on and so forth makes time filled with God. They're Vahej within Vahej, which is Kula-shays, which we could talk about the calendars for a long time. And then finally, all waters, rivers, lakes should be kept clean. So Greta Thunberg would be very happy with that. There are a whole bunch of laws. These are just a few I've kind of picked out, hopefully to stop you guys wearing your scary outfits. The Báb talks about the obligatory prayer of the Bábís, but he doesn't reveal the text and says that the believers had to face him whom God shall make manifest. Okay, so again, turning everyone's head to Baha'u'llah. This is what he's trying to do there. And then it goes on to say, a Bábí king, and this is an example of non-Bábís not being allowed into 5 provinces, a Bábí king can expel non-believers, but only if it doesn't cause them grief or harm. Then the law can't even be mentioned. So it's ridiculous. As I say, these previous harsh laws, they're all annulled, basically.
This summary of the laws of the Persian Bayan, which that great man, Dr. Saidi, has produced, I have a small issue with it, because when you read the Persian Bayan, and to be honest, I have also read it several times, some of the laws are mentioned that in the Islamic dispensation, that the promised one would destroy institutions. These were prophecies in the previous dispensation, in that book that you mentioned, the Bahar. So the Báb is saying, in a sense, I will destroy past institutions. So he says, I am fulfilling that. But then in his own essence, in his own nature, in his own dispensation, he says, don't do anything to upset anyone, don't hurt anyone, in case there is a little baby chicken inside it. You know, it's essence of gentleness. The harsh laws are mentioned simply because they were mentioned previously. So it's identified with him, but it's not implemented. So this is the paradox. You've got to be very aware that Baha'u'llah is coming round the corner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fernando Pasio. I think we got the gist of what you were saying, which I think is echoing, hopefully, the points that I'd made, that certainly these were not things that the Báb was saying that we should do, but they were previously written, and that's why the Báb's making mention of them. Thank you. So we know that work is an exalted form of worship. He creates the Baha'u'llah, ordains a new 19-day period of fasting. A lot of the Bábís in the early days actually would do both the Bábí fast and the Islamic fast as well. So they were super hardcore. He abolishes temporary marriage obviously referring to sigeh, where in sigeh you can marry someone for, even I believe now in Iran, you can get married for a 40-minute period where you can then end up doing activities that married people may do. For example, baking a cake on a Sunday or whatever. I don't know what those activities may be. And then after 40 minutes, you can stop. And God is happy with you. It's okay. So he gets rid of this. He permits charging interest on loans, and then enjoins monogamy unless one partner is infertile. But again, I think there's probably an explanation again that goes on with regards to this. Moves the Qibla from Mecca to himself and establishes new inheritance laws and a dowry. This is a eulogy to Baha'u'llah. That's a very small window into the Bayan, and there's many other ways that you can look at it, but I thought it'd be fun maybe to try and understand a little bit about what's going on.
Dave, just something that caught my attention in the previous slide. It says that the Báb created the Huququllah. I always thought that the Huququllah had been created by Baha'u'llah in the Kitab Aqdas.
There are certainly some laws that Baha'u'llah took on and implemented from the Báb.
I want to say thank you first for compiling all this together, but you said in one of those that said that the Báb actually says the word Baha'u'llah. Does he actually say Baha'u'llah, or he says him whom God shall make manifest?
Verbatim Baha'u'llah.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right,
he mentions Baha'u'llah's name, yeah, in the third Vahed, I think it's chapter 16.
Wow, thank you.
He mentions Baha'u'llah's name. Yeah.
With respect to the Huququllah, again, this is some of the laws that Baha'u'llah has accepted from the Bábí dispensation, like the calendar.
As I thought, that seemed to be the case. Obviously, the whole giving money, tithes have existed, zakat has existed in Islam, this whole giving money, but I think that's just one of the laws that he's accepted.
Quick question from me. Do the Sunni and Shia Muslims have the same laws? Do they have the same laws back then and now as well?
There are a lot of differences, but we can't say all. But the Shia law, it's very much near to the Judaism than the Sunni law. The Shia law is a continuation of the Judaism, and it's very, very near. And the Sunni law, no, easier than Shia law.
So the Sunni law is less harsh or just easier to follow?
They are easier, to foreign that they are less harsh. For example, a very simple example, all the things that come from the sea in the Sunni law is allowed. All the kind of fish, or even if it's not a fish, you can eat it because that's from the sea. But in the Shia law, it's just like the Torah. You can't eat a fish if he has no
shell. Is it?
Yes, if he has no shells. Yes, and for the animals, that's the same. The only exception for the Shia law that Shia people can eat camels and not Jews can't.
So if you want to eat a camel, then being a Shia over a Jew would be beneficial in that example. Yeah.
It depends.
Right. Thank you very much, dear Patrick. Thank you very much indeed.
Sorry.
No, thank you very much. Hopefully that takes care of your question, Stanisha. So there are some differences. Are there any final comments before we go to our devotional portion?
Dave, do you mind going to the page, looking at the laws, and it showed laws on inheritance and charging interest on loans? And I find it interesting that some of these laws associated with material wealth were established by the Bab, because this is an ongoing conversation among Baha'is who study commerce and economy, that the Bab was a merchant. And, you know, Baha'is who may want to villainize private enterprise, I know people who like to say, but the Bab was a merchant. And I feel like it's interesting that some of these laws actually came about during his dispensation. I think that's very interesting.
It was commonplace back in those days, as it probably is similar around the world now. But if you ordered something, let's say you ordered goat's milk, and the price of goat's milk go up, even though you agreed a price, the seller would say, no, the goat's milk is now worth 10 times the amount, you must pay me more. Or someone might order the goat's milk, and then he knows it's going off, he'll go to the merchant and he'll say, sorry, the goat's milk is going down the rest. The Bab was very, very fair. The one thing you really learn about the Bab when he was in Bushehr, that he was incredibly fair, and he apparently changed some systems in the way in which you do things. That once a price was agreed, that was it. Even if the thing was now worth a lot more and the Bab could sell it for more, he wouldn't. There's many revolutionary things that the Bab brought about.
How long was Mullah Hussein in Makkah for? Do we know that?
I believe it's 9 days. And this is actually the last time that Mullah Hussein's going to see the Bab. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe we'll draw to a close there, because from here again, we will go on to our next chapter, which is Mullah Hussein's journey to Mazandaran. So the story continues, it gets more exciting, and this scene, this drama that's playing out is absolutely mind-blowing. It's exciting. You've just had Mullah Hussein being with the Bab, and now he's going to go. And who's he going to meet? He's going to meet God's hidden treasure. Who is God's hidden treasure? He's going to go to Mazandaran. Even though I know the answer, I'm really excited to find out. Who is it going to be? So we will find out tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Even if you know already, maybe you'll find something else out. Who knows? Anyway, we're going to go into our devotional portion. So would whoever like to see us off with prayers, please do so. Let's kick this off. Thank you.
He is the compassionate, the all-bountiful. O God, my God, thou seest me, thou knowest me. Thou art my haven and my refuge. None have I sought, nor any will I seek save thee.